free to swear as much as you like.
It's on.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining this very special edition of the Recruiter Enablement Show, I guess it's called. I'm here with second-time guest, Holland McCue, who is the first person I've come across to use the term recruiter enablement, which was in 2018. And yes. Chad Sowash, who many of you will know from the Chad and Cheese podcast, from being a recruitment advisor, recruitment tech advisor, and all sorts of other different things. I wouldn't even do the intro. I'll just Holland. For those of you who didn't see the first interview with me, or didn't know, or don't know who you are yet, give us a quick introduction. Who are you?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Holland McCue. I am a talent attraction, experience, and marketing leader. I've spent time at companies like Red Hat, Delta Airlines, Cox Enterprises, and I fell into our industry by way of marketing. Started my career in the B2B space, dabbled a little bit more a little later on, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I think that double tour in marketing really, uniquely shapes how I feel about my work within TA, but this topic in particular.
Absolutely. And one of the big perks of working for Delta previously was you were able to magically whip out some headphones that you could use for this recording.
I sure did. I got my, little Delta plug-in tune out onboard experience set.
Still using your merch to this day. Great. Okay, Chad, you give I butchered the introduction. You give your own introduction.
Yeah, I think it's easy just to go to LinkedIn and look for Chad Sowash, since I'm the only one that's there. But I've been in the industry since before Monster was Monster. I was with Monster when we launched it in January of '99. I've been in HR tech, working directly with people like Holland pretty much my entire career around HR tech processes, compliance, all those different crazy intersections, DEI, veteran hiring, it's all over the place. So being able to work with those organizations, build tech, also work with startups, partner with startups and bigger organizations to try to focus on getting the best efficiencies out there so that our people can actually have fun at work as opposed to play administrivia monkey all day. But I'm now full time as just talking into a mic for a living. So the Chad and Cheese podcast and/or on stages all over the world, wherever they will have us.
Well, it's a good that you mentioned that, because this is actually a very international show today, because I'm coming from the United Kingdom's coolest country, Scotland. Holland, you are in the States, and Chad is in Portugal.
Yep.
Wonderful. All right, Holland, I want to ask you first to just give us your definition of what's it all about, what's recruiter enablement all about, and then I want to ask Chad his perspective on the kind of evolution of this discipline, or non-evolution of this discipline, as it might be. So, Holland, what's it all about?
Yeah. So for me, and I have a little bit more technical of a definition, but for me, recruiter enablement is the processes, content, and technology that empower your recruitment teams to recruit efficiently and at a higher velocity. And so more plainly, it's how we get recruiters to spend more time with qualified leads and less time with everyone else.
Okay, good. Why do we think, so Chad, what you know all about the evolution of the recruitment technology world, why do you think it is that today we've got more companies using avatars to do their hiring than we do giving them a library of social media outreach messaging? Well, why have we got this wrong? We got this the wrong way around, haven't we?
Yeah, we did. Well, and we have to go back before the internet and the process methodologies that were actually there. Then the internet came. Change was huge from a scale standpoint because everybody had to come into the office to give you their resume or their application, and or they had to fax it in or mail it, snail mail it in, right? Then you have the advent of email. Then you have the advent of being able to apply for jobs via job boards like monster.com back in the day, all the way through today. Scale erupted. So HR and talent acquisition, the actual functions, were not prepared. And to be quite frank, they're still not prepared today. Because scale is happening every single day. With Moore's law, it's happening much faster. So what we need to do as humans is we need to be able to scale just as fast, which means the HR function, the talent acquisition function, needs to actually scale faster. How do we do that on the tactical side with recruiters? Because as Holland was just talking about, I mean, that's more of like a white glove service. You want humans to be more human. How do we do that? We start to implement more and better tech to be able to take the administrative monkey off the recruiter's back. They're doing all this administration when they should be doing what they love to do, and that's talking to people.
So
Yes.
Holland, solving for like scale, as Chad's talking about, I think one of the goals of recruiter enablement is you mentioned is to get recruiters spending more time talking to the people they need to be talking to, which candidates, qualified quality candidates, and less time doing other things. What are some of the tactical things that we want to be getting off of our plates as recruiters?
Yeah. So I mean, one, and I want to loop back to this to piggyback on what Chad was saying. I think there's an element of scale around tech, but I want to make sure that we cover just kind of building out like a modern recruiting team to support that scale. But in terms of some things that we can get off of recruiters' plates, you mentioned this earlier on, Adam, but it's content creation. It's really making sure that we have repeatable access to resources, playbooks. We're not, starting from square one every time a rec hits our plate. It's also making sure that we have training on demand, that we're really leaning into micro training. Chad talked about how quickly technology has evolved and how quickly tech has scaled. I think, you can't tune into a podcast or one of these without, touching AI and what disruption that's going to have for us. And so really leaning into like micro learning and accessibility, I think is what's going to help recruiters, get to that scalability level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so in terms of like playbooks to start with,
Yeah.
like how do we build a playbook? What do we think about when we're doing that? Who should be building that? What does it do?
Yeah, I think it should be a partnership. So I mentioned the advent of the call at the start of the call that my background was in B2B marketing. And so when I was on the B2B side of the house, I was supporting a large team of field sellers. And my responsibility was knowledge management. So really creating a one-stop shop for resources, playbooks, competitive intelligence, evolution of company products, services, et cetera, and just things that were readily available to our sellers, but just not easily accessible and like a digestible and aggregated way. Also learned a lot more about the sales motion, and I'll tie these together, which is really just a combination of like actionable steps in your general selling philosophy. Around prospecting, connecting, qualifying, researching, all that good stuff. And so at the core of recruiter enablement, it really is, Adam, like building out that end-to-end playbook as you're going through the motions of prospecting. What is the lever that you're pulling at the prospecting level? Once you've advanced like to mid-funnel or early stage funnel, connecting, qualifying, what are the additional content levers that you're pulling there? And then even all the way through handling objections and closing. And so for me, when I think about playbooks, it's not just, traditional like post and pray, where do I, post my role once it hits my desk, but really tying actionable steps, repeatable content, intelligence to the motions of the recruiting process, just as you would if you were a marketing team or sales enablement team equipping a group of sellers who are, enabling their go-to-market strategy.
Well, great.
Okay.
A real quick example. I mean, when we're talking about like post and pray, we have programmatic performance driven advertising now, right? So for all those companies that are out there now who haven't like focused on programmatic types and performance driven platforms, that's just another way to take a lot of that administrivia away, control to some extent, but it's control that recruiters don't need. They're not experts in where to post the job, how to post the job, how to bid the job. Get that off their plate so that they can have more time. And again, that's just one specific example, just job postings.
Yeah.
Very, very good point. And I think the job of a recruiter today involves so many different skills. They have to draw on their left brain, they have to draw on their right brain. Unless you're an absolute special genius, it's very difficult for you to do all of these different things. So I think leaning on enablement tools is something that can kind of level you up a bit. Chad, you talked about like programmatic advertising, and I absolutely agree that is a very, very specialist kind of knowledge that somebody needs to compete with a programmatic advertising solution, and virtually no recruiters have got that knowledge. What are some of the other types of enablement technologies that maybe you've come across in your work with startups and your work on the Chad and Cheese podcast that kind of fit into that same type of bracket? The kinds of things that are taking away busy work, adding expertise. I'm thinking Talk Push and products like that, for example. What are some of the other ones that you think would be fit into this?
Well, I think any product that let's start back up at the top of the funnel with programmatic, right? So first and foremost, when a rec comes out, it should be able to post and go into your candidate database, which you've already spent millions of dollars. In some cases, some companies have spent millions of dollars on recruitment marketing, and they've acquired those individuals over and over and over and over. So we've got so much waste, fraud, and abuse that's actually happening in TA and HR right now. We can easily focus on what we've done, what we've paid for, and start to leverage those things first and foremost. So that's the internal candidates that we've already acquired, we've already paid for. Then externally, we've got the programmatic side of the house. All of that can happen without a recruiter even needing to really be that as involved as they are today. Then you start coming back down the funnel with screening, right? Pre-interviews. There's just so much tech, even sourcing. There's so many great sourcing AI tools that are out there today that they don't take the entire process away from the recruiter. What they do is they enable the recruiter to do it much faster. You get a slate of individuals that recruiters can jump in and start scanning down right out of the gate. Then, as you talked about Talk Push and many of the conversational AI, as we start to lead toward Gen AI, they're all these powerful platforms that are in some cases point solutions, and some are actually platforms that could really alleviate a lot of the pain, a lot of the expectations that we put way too much on recruiters. We're asking them to be marketers, sourcers, pick job boards. I mean, we're asking them to do this full array of literally they have no expertise in. It's not their fault, for God's sakes. It is a very vast to be a subject matter expert in all those areas. So those are just some of the areas, and that's just top of the funnel. You can go all the way through in being able to enable them to again focus on the hiring process, then being able to during onboarding have touch points through SMS or what have you. I mean, we need to think as much about the recruiter experience as we do the candidate experience. And to be quite frank, we do a really shit job of the candidate experience. So how much more of a shitty job do we do with the recruiter experience?
Yeah. And go on, Holland.
I was just going to react to that. I think a lot of that, the reason we do such a shit experience on both the candidate and recruiting side is I think that oftentimes, when you're bringing tech to market, whether it's top funnel, mid funnel, end of funnel, it's system driven, we often think about it in these confines of, step and status and moving people through a very transactional process because it drives reporting, it drives compliance. And so I think as we think about the evolution and what the power of recruiter enablement can actually do, like tactics and like even like just coming up a level before we get to the tactics that underpin recruiter enablement, I think there needs to be a mindset shift, or there's an opportunity to have a mindset shift to really think about the recruiting motion. And so, you know, I mentioned that that's a combination of those actionable steps, but more broadly, it's also that philosophy around, you know, how do you believe that process should be carried out? And if you have a really defined philosophy around how that process should be carried out, that should be baked in experience, and you should build programming and resources and knowledge for recruiters to do that in a way that it's in line with, you know, how your company wants to show up, but also drives that experience, Chad.
Well, what we also need to do is we need to focus on, you said earlier around velocity, right? Things are moving faster than they ever have, and they are speeding up. We cannot stop and think that we have a tech stack that is done, good for the next 5 years. It's probably good for the next 6 months, kids, right? We need to be more fluid. So when we're talking about not just tech, but also playbooks, this has to be a fluid discussion. This cannot be something that you stop. I remember in the military, we have an SOP, standard operating procedure. You put it down and you're good to go until the next version comes out, which who knows how long that could be. You put standard operating procedures out for recruiters, that's got to be something that's fluid, that has addendums all the time.
Exactly, and it's a company.
It's 100% organic. It has to be, and you have to, or sorry, it's not even organic. You have to actively go and iterate with that thing, because you learn all the time. That outreach messaging isn't working all that great. Let's tweak it. Let's work out why it's not. Let's A/B test it, try different things, see what's working, and then make it better. It's a constant evolution, I think. Yeah. Now, Chad mentioned generative AI. Holland, does things like ChatGPT and products like this have a part to play in recruiter enablement?
I do. You know, I think when I think we're just scratching the surface. I think if you think about it in which I think we've seen the most early adoption around is around content creation. I think it definitely has an opportunity to help scale, to help you, you know, get content out quickly. I think I question the quality of content at this stage. Obviously, that's going to evolve here over the next, you know, 6 to 18 months, like pretty rapidly. We'll be able to, you know, teach tone and nuance and, you know, hopefully input elements of like our style guides, so that those motions that you're going to market with around the content you're creating for whatever purpose it's serving, it's very much aligned and representative of your brand. And it doesn't feel like it's coming across as transactional and robotic. But I also think there's, you know, a day where some of those manual tasks that Chad was talking about, like that will be replaced by AI over time, which I think is a pro, because it's going to really drive home to my definition of recruiter enablement, which is spend less time, you know, spend more time with qualified leads and less time with everyone else. And so if you can outsource that aspect of your process or your motion, and you can, you know, really use the modern recruiter to lean into those, you know, softer skill sets around, you know, consultative conversation, pitching, selling, you know, I think the opportunities of generative AI, you know, are boundless to really up-level the function long-term.
Absolutely. Chad, earlier on, Holland mentioned the concept of sales enablement. And I have for a long time seen lots of parallels between mainstream sales and marketing and, or especially B2B sales and marketing and talent acquisition. What do you think? I mean, you're nodding your head, so I think I know what you think, but like, yeah, big differences or nothing?
Not really. The only big difference between the two are budgets, right? I think one of the things that TA needs to do is they need to find their spine, because no organization exists without talent acquisition being able to place those individuals in those seats. We don't have anybody who's going to ideate new product, build new product, sell the product, service the product, open the wallet to get more share out of that without talent acquisition filling those seats. We're the beating heart. We are the engine of every organization, but yet I don't know how many, and it drives me crazy, C-level HR refer to themselves as cost centers as opposed to drivers of revenue.
Yeah.
And until we can get our mindset like a CRO, because that's why the CRO gets the budget, because they can easily point to the bottom line, right? None of that happens. Zero without us. And until we get that spine, until we actually get the message and narrative around us, we don't have the budget. We don't have the budget. We can't go and do the really cool things that sales does.
Holland, what's your first-hand experience of this? You've been in leadership roles in several well-known organizations, and like Chad says, we need more spine in talent acquisition. Do you think that's correct, or what's your view?
I think there's a little bit, you need more access and just in more knowledge, and sure, you could probably equate that to spine, but I do think, and many of the organizations I've worked for have talked about recruiting in the constructs of a cost center. It's also, often been plugged in or, lumped alongside other HR programs or G&A functions that are often seen as cost centers. I do think there are organizations out there who've done the due diligence to, map back to this vacancy creates this much in revenue and lost opportunity. And I think if we can continue on that momentum, and I think if organizations can crack what that revenue loss means for them, absolutely, you have a much more solid foundation to go and ask for additional dollars and build that business case of why you need, whether it's tech or people resources, so that you're getting the bodies in the seats more quickly, the right bodies in the seats more quickly to avoid that revenue loss downstream. I think some of our barriers to entry around that are one, making sure that you have just figuring out progressive leadership in an organization, but two, I've never been somewhere where an organization has really cracked the hiring plan or the workforce plan. I think sales has an advantage in that they have, whether from the board or their leadership team, very defined revenue targets. Your sales plan informs your marketing plan, which ergo informs, your budget, your enablement activities. And until we're really able to crack the workforce plan effectively and the TA side of the house, and there's a lot of players involved in that, from HR to finance to business leaders, it's hard to tell that story.
Chad, you talk to a lot of people leading talent acquisition teams. Have you seen much emergence of like a focus on this type of thing, talent like recruiter enablement? Have you seen companies that are structuring their teams to create like roles in this area to focus on it, or not particularly?
Yeah, it almost seems like putting somebody in a DEI position where it's more optics than it's real in many cases. And if there is a downsizing, they're the first people to go. So the only thing that I can say around that is, again, when you understand that without talent acquisition and the efficiencies of actually getting people in the seats faster, product isn't created faster, it's not sold faster, it's not serviced faster, right? Until we start to understand that. And I'll give you a great example. When Jeff Lackey was at CVS, 90% of his budget came from other departments.
Wow.
Yes. He actually went out and he understood every single business unit. He sold to those business units and said, hey, look, I can't give you what your expectations are. I can't meet those expectations because here's my budget. This is what I'm going to need from you. You are now my client to be able to meet those expectations. He automatically thought with an MBA mind, right? Yeah. How does this business work? They treated talent acquisition like a business. I've heard so many people say that. And to be quite frank, all I'm saying is they're full of shit for the most part. There are a handful, I think, that are out there that are literally taking the reins, and they're becoming the chief of staff to the CEOs because they understand how pivotal and crucial those individuals are, and the talent acquisition and HR function really is.
Well, I hope Jeff Lackey's created a how-to guide or something like that, because I think a lot of people need it. Holland, I want to just finish off by asking about like some practical suggestions. So you talked about like resources and content, and you also talked about like micro-learning, for example.
Yeah.
So dedicated technologies for this. Where are the? There's not. What should we use? What should we use to go and like store and enable our teams with all this technology?
Yeah, great questions. So I'm going to unpack that. So one, in terms of like technology and where you go off and store this, you know, you can definitely use marketing technology that's out there. You know, in my previous lives, I've used Seismic, I've used Marcom Central, which is, you know, a more cost-effective solution. So I would definitely take a nod and go do some research on MarTech if you're really interested in centralizing a lot of, you know, what we're talking about here today. There's amazing marketing tech that can do that. I've not seen technology of this sort, you know, readily available on the TA market. I've seen LMS type systems that maybe, you know, talk about more like learning and like micro learning around like your tools and systems, but nothing that really connects the content to the process to, you know, market intelligence in our space. In terms of some like practical, you know, takeaways, I'm gonna approach this from, you know, a content lens, if that's where, you know, my really expertise lies. But when I think about content, I think about really dropping it into 4 big buckets. And so first bucket is really all around like educating your leads, really around the role and the team that they're signing up for. I think that we, talent marketers, employer brand teams are really guilty of spending a lot of time on the culture promise, the brand promise, and not enough time on the role promise and making candidates effective down funnel by arming them with enough information around the role they're signing up for. So really lean into that. Second is really thinking through ways to help your recruiters overcome objections. And this can be as simple as, you know, I read this on Glassdoor, you know, thematically, can you tell me more, to, you know, I'm considering this offer and I'm looking at your benefits program, and, you know, really help me understand like my total compensation and how that's shifting in this new role. So really lean into overcoming objections. I'm also a big believer, so kind of content bucket number 3, is, you know, priming your candidates to be good leads down the line. And so this is really falls into the camp of no gotchas, really helping them understand the core companies that you're looking for, really understand the interview experience they're going to go through, and make sure that they're able to put their best foot forward and really shine. Your recruiters have spent a lot of time qualifying leads and getting them there. And so you don't want those gotchas down the line. And then the last is really thinking through information that your leads, you know, when we come to close, can share with decision makers in their network. And so I equate this to like the buying committee on the sales side of the house. And, you know, making a career shift is a huge decision, and it's not often one that you make alone. You often make it in partnership with a mentor, you know, a close friend or confidant, your significant other or spouse. And so really making sure that you're also equipping team or your candidates with content for their buying team and their buying committee is going to be critical. Absent, you know, some of that technology that I talked about, you know, you can build this on your intranet. You can build it into your existing tech stack today. Like, you know, do it, and, you know, plugging in attachments into, you know, the ATS.
Great. Okay, lots of practical suggestions to finish with. So thank you very much, Chad. Thank you very much, Holland, for coming and joining me today. Chad, what's your call to action for people that have watched this? What do you want them to do? Follow the Chad and Cheese podcast? What do you want them to do?
I think we need more voices like Holland out there who have the practical experience and are connecting the dots. For the most part, in TA, we're way too tactical and not strategic enough, and we need more strategic thinkers to challenge, right? I mean, that's one of the things that we need. And of course, you know, for more micro learning, you can always go to chadcheese.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That was, by the way, I was genuinely meaning, here's the sales pitch. So chadcheese.com, definitely. Okay. Holland, what do you want people to do? They should watch your video. You were talking about this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Where do they find that video?
Yeah, absolutely. So connect with me, Holland McCue on LinkedIn. I have kind of an early blog post on the topic from 2018, and then, a video around how to make this a thing in your shop, linked on my profile as well. So definitely check those out. And if you want to have a conversation about building a program within your team, shoot me a message and we'll find some time.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks so much again. See you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks.